Hey everyone, it's Joe from Gadgetry Tech, and today I'm going to talk about the SteelSeries Nova 3 headset. This is a $100 headset. It's basically the Nova 1 plus a USB DAC and RGB, but ultimately they perform and look very similar. Now, if at the end of the review you decide this is the right headset for you, I will have a generic Amazon affiliate link. It helps support the channel because I purchase a lot of stuff that is not sent to me for review. It's the only way I can provide honest opinions on, this is the best X version or headset under $100 or whatever it may be. Now, this was not sent to me for review, so again, I used that money to purchase headsets just like this one. However, SteelSeries did email me after the Nova 1 review, so hopefully in the future that changes and I have a better or closer working relationship with them. But either way, whether it's sent to me for review or not, it does not change the way I feel about anything. I'm always going to provide an unbiased coverage. In fact, I've said good things about stuff I've purchased and bad, and stuff that was sent to me for review, both good and bad. So hopefully you find this helpful. Now, the $100 price range is flooded with headsets to choose from. So there are wireless headsets that are the same or less than this, and obviously more, and then there are wired ones that are less than more. So it's really hard to decide sometimes which is right for you. Some people will just prefer to have a SteelSeries headset, and some may want to avoid it. It's just a matter of personal preference. So I'm going to be very straightforward here. So what makes this one different from the Nova 1, I already mentioned, is it has a USB DAC. What is a USB DAC? That means you can plug it in like this with a USB-C port directly to your computer. Now, if your computer does not have USB-C, it comes with an extension cord, which not only converts the USB-C cable that comes in the box to USB-A, it also gives you a longer cord, which means if you sit farther away from, let's say, a PlayStation or your computer, you can have a nice long USB cable so you can still connect it. Now, you want to use USB when you can, because that is a huge reason why you're paying $100 versus $60. The only other difference between this and the Nova 1, which is right here, is the fact that this has RGB. So if you want to customize and add your own custom colors to make this a little more unique, sure, that's one reason to do it. Otherwise, it's really just the USB mode. Now, the Nova lineup, I'm going to talk about the tech stuff for just a moment. The sensitivity rating is 93 decibels, a little bit lower than most gaming headsets, which is typically 96 to, let's say, 103-ish. That means that they tend to not get as loud as a headset of higher efficiency. So, and this is totally separate from impedance. They're all still 32 ohm headphones, but the lower sensitivity means it may not get as loud. So the USB mode gets you a little bit more volume over the Nova 1. Now, if you plug it in with aux, there's the aux cord that it comes with. And the aux cord is not a standard aux cord. It's a USB-C, and I grabbed the wrong side. USB-C on one side, which is what is going into your headset, because the headset only has a USB-C jack on it. On the other end is your aux cable. So this isn't something you can just replace easily. You have to get it through the SteelSeries website, or get a TRRS extension if for any reason you need that longer. But anyway, that's the aux mode. Now, when you're in aux mode, it sounds pretty much identical to the Nova 1. So if you're not using the USB DAC and you don't care for RGB, just get the Nova 1 and save your money. They sound the same. They use the same drivers, same ear pads, same design, and that one's cheaper. Now, just like the Nova 1s and 7s and all the other Nova lineup, you have a retractable mic, which I really, really like. On the USB option, the Nova 3 option, when the microphone is muted, you can actually have a red LED. There's a little push button on it on the back of the headset, and you can see that the LED is on right now. Now, if I unmute, I actually hear a little beep in the headset and the light turns off. So when the light is on, you are muted. Now, there is microphone side tone with the Nova 3 versus the 1. So if you want to hear yourself speak, this will do that only in USB-C mode or USB mode. You can change the volume in SteelSeries GG software, and you can disable side tone. So if you don't care for that, it's not like you're stuck with it. When you are muted, side tone is deactivated as well. Now, on the note of buttons, I just pressed the mute button. The volume wheel is right above the cable, which is interesting because it's a little bit harder to get to. Once you get muscle memory, it's fine, but you can't just reach your thumb up to mute it. I don't know why you have to kind of reach around the cable. So if you're looking for speed for quick volume adjustments, you get used to it pretty fast, and I suppose you can use the cable as a reference. But typically, headsets are a little bit more accessible than this for volume adjustment, provided they're designed to work with a cable. Other than that, there's no other controls. You have mute, you have your volume wheel, which is a fixed volume wheel, that because if you're an aux, you don't want a digital one. You need to still be able to adjust the volume, and then the microphone retracts nicely. I think a big thing that I like about it is the comfort, and this one's no different than the 1 or even the 7, which I really liked. I like this design a lot because it doesn't have the single hinge design that the Novas, when you step up into the Pros. It's the double yoke, so this actually should be extremely durable over a long period of time. The clamp force is a little bit higher as well, which I think helps give a good seal to maintain, consistent bass response. So as far as like build quality and comfort, I mean, it feels solid. There's some twisties going here, and I don't want to push it too hard, but this is because this pivots, it should handle quite a bit of day-to-day use. Now, what's really interesting is you actually have an adjustable headband, which does change the clamp force slightly. There's these two little nubs, if you will, that hold the headband in place. And if I pop this out, I can go to the lower setting. So I'm going to do that real quick. I don't do this often, so it's going to be pretty tight. So when the headband's on the lower setting, you could see that this creates a bigger gap. And you would want to match it so it's the same on both sides. This makes the clamp force a little bit stronger, and you get, it's better for smaller heads and if you like a tighter fit, but it does give you more of a space above the band. I actually like the default setting on this, whereas on the Nova Pros, I liked to shrink it to increase the clamp force because I found that those were too light. So in addition to the headband, you do get telescoping yokes. So it's slight, but you could see that this goes in and out. I found it was really easy to get the comfort dialed in with this headset. And then what I really like about the Nova series is it pivots. Unlike the Razer Black Sharks, which I have over here, I'll talk about these after, there's no rotation. It just flexes. So I like that these are full pivot. Not only does it help fit your head better, but if you ever need to wear it around your head, I like that too. Continuing with comfort, glasses comfort. I always try to call this out because a lot of people have to game while they wear glasses, and this is an important thing. These are exceptional for gaming with glasses. Arguably one of the most comfortable sub-$100 headsets you can wear with glasses. The Sport Weave fabric is extremely plush. The initial give is extremely soft, and because of the way they're designed, it's not as critical to have a slight crease on this pad to impact your sound quality, so you should get pretty comparable sound performance whether you wear glasses or not. Now, I could wear these for a longer period of time. I use Gunnars. I don't wear prescriptions, but I wear blue light glasses often, and I could wear the Nova 3 and the Nova 1 longer than I could with my Black Shark, and the Black Shark was pretty comfortable too. So I think the only other ones comparable for glasses comfort in $100 or less is the Turtle Beach Recon 500s. Those are really nice too, but I think these might be one of the best for people who wear frames. So overall, it's solid. It's 253 grams. It's crazy lightweight. You have this plastic that tends to show some marks, but again, it's a $100 gaming headset, so something's got to give. The left and right label's kind of cool. You have a big L on each side. Basically, just know that your mic is on the left and so is your cord. So you're going to have an easy reference to go by.
And this is what I sound like talking on the Nova 3 headset. It's not top of the line at $100 or anything like that. It sounds fairly shallow and hollow sounding, but the background noise rejection is decent. It's better than ones that I've heard from Turtle Beach, which I think have a more natural sound to them. They're warmer sounding, but they also pick up more background noise. So depending on what your preference is, I wouldn't use this for a podcast or a live streaming mic as your primary mic. You could do some EQ tuning and Sonar to add some warmth by boosting, the 100 to 150 hertz range, and then decrease your 1000 to 2000 hertz range to make the microphone sound a little bit warmer and flatter. This is what it sounds like. Again, not the end of the world, but I'd say it's a solid mid-tier microphone at this price range.
All right, now it's time to talk about sound quality, my favorite part. And I speak so much about this that I'm actually refilming this part of the video because I speak too long sometimes and I go off on a tangent. Sound quality is more than just the frequency response, the squiggle. It's not just about how much bass or how little bass, treble, etc. There's a lot of things to what makes a good headset or headphone or IEM good or bad. Now, what I like about SteelSeries, in particular this Nova lineup, is their driver matching is exceptional. Now, you may be wondering, what is driver matching? In a simple sense, the idea of a well-matched headset or headphone means that both drivers, the left and right speaker, are behaving very, very similar, as close to identical as possible. That means the bass levels are at the same decibel or amplitude. It means the phasing is in alignment. So both, when they're both designed to push out, when you have frequency responses like this, think of that as when it's up, the cone is pushing out, and when it's down, it's pulling back. I'm really simplifying this, but the idea that they both perform the same or very close to the same makes it easier for you to localize objects. And what that means is footstep awareness and positioning. Hearing the footsteps is different than knowing exactly where the footsteps are coming from. So it's really important to factor both in. Now, I'm calling this out because I've noticed over my years of reviewing headsets that this Nova lineup, they did an incredible job at matching the drivers. They have such similar performance on left and right. It's very easy to pinpoint the direction. So if you care about footsteps, FPS, competitive gaming, you may not even care to watch the rest of this review, because I'll be honest, this is one of the best positional awareness type headsets at 100 or less. Now, when you start talking about sound quality and frequency response, these are not a very flat sounding headphone. They have some weird things going on. So the sub bass isn't crazy strong. If you want a lot of sub bass, that thunderous pounding bass, get the Razer Black Shark V2. These have a warmer, smoother sound. The bass is more luscious, if you will. These trail off in the lower frequencies, but then they get pretty strong in the upper bass region into your lower mids. What that means is that it sounds a little bit warmer, honestly a little bit boxy sounding, a little boomy. Typically not what you want from music listening. It's not going to sound great unless you do some tuning, which I will talk about shortly. Mid-range isn't terrible. It's a little bit recessed in the mid-range, but again, I'll fix that. And then the highs, so what I noticed also about Nova, even though they have really good driver matching, they're a little bit shouty. So in your 2,000 to 4,000 hertz range, it's basically, the Nova lineup is almost like someone's talking to you with their hands around their mouth. I've said this on a few other Nova reviews. So they're just a little bit shouty. Now that might help convey some footsteps or frequencies better, and maybe that's why they did it. Personally, I just think it's inherent to the design. It's a cheaper headset, and this particular design is just a little bit more shouty than some others. The Razer Black Shark V2 is not shouty. It's a lot more, it's better dampened, if you will, so it sounds softer and smoother. And then the treble kind of rolls off, believe it or not. It sounds shouty, so some people might think it's got a lot of detail, but then it gets a little bit darker in the upper treble, and you don't have that sparkle that some other headphones do, sometimes too much. So I think this is good enough for gaming without touching it. Again, if you're just using aux, just buy the Nova 1. It's the same sound experience. What USB does is it opens up the door to customize the EQ and save the EQ to the headset using the SteelSeries GG software. Now, Sonar, their more enhanced parametric EQ, you can customize the daylights out of your sound. That works with any audio device. So if you are using just aux to your laptop, for example, you could still buy just the Nova 1 and then use Sonar to EQ it. If you don't care to do that, or I guess you still want the RGB and the USB power to clean it up, use Sonar for this, and then you get, you know, the best of everything. So I'm going to talk about EQ tuning now. I want to show you the differences and kind of explain what my mindset was as far as customizing the sound to my liking. All right, so the first thing I want to do is talk about how this measured. Now, this is how it measured on my rig. This is not an industry standard $10,000 Gross system, so my measurements are not going to match what it would have on that. Now, when you compare it to other headsets I've reviewed in the past, if you're looking at the graphs, you would use it to compare to other headsets I've measured, but again, not as an industry whole. So don't compare this to something on the ratings website or RTINGS website. So going to the sound quality, as I mentioned, the bass rolls off and you can see that below 100 hertz. It kind of drops down a bit and you're losing about 5 decibels. Not major, but it is noticeable. To me, it actually sounds more than 5 decibels when you wear it. But anyway, that's how it measured. So you can see that there's a lift in the upper bass or mid bass, which is right about 200 hertz. It kind of peaks around there. Then it drops a bit in the mids. You can see this big dip just over 500 hertz. This is like 560-ish. It picks back up again in the 2000 range and then it drops significantly. That's to help deal with the resonance of the headset, because this headset, again, it naturally amplifies that frequency range. So it's kind of necessary to get this to sound somewhat enjoyable. Now, the upper treble, again, it's relatively flat. It doesn't ever really peak or lift up too much, and then it drops back off. Now, my treble measurements are probably the hardest to really confirm on here because of the way my system works. But regardless, this is what I started as a base point. Now, when you go into the SteelSeries GG engine, which is on here, first off, if you're using GG to tune it, make sure sonar is either set to flat or deactivated in order to be able to customize this properly, because you don't want to tune it by ear and then find out that both the GG version of your EQ tune and Nova sonar, or the SteelSeries sonar, are working in conjunction, because it's going to sound different if one of them is ever turned off. So just tune one if you're customizing it. So the reason why I'm showing you the engine software is because this actually saves to the headset and will apply on console. So if you are playing this on PlayStation 5 and you want to do a custom EQ, I'm going to pull out my custom tune right here. It's not too drastic, but it's just what I can do with the limits of GG. So I boosted the sub bass quite a bit, 3.5 decibels. I can't change what bands I'm adjusting up here, but this 180 hertz, I dropped by 2. So I have plus 3.5, then minus 2, plus 0.5 at 500 hertz, minus 0.5 at 1000, 0.5 or plus 0.5 at 3000, plus 0.5 at 11,000. Now, if I save that to the headset, even if I unplug this and plug it back in, that setting is now applied, which is again why you would use this on, let's say, a PlayStation 5. Now, going by that setting, if I go back to my measurement software and I go to my tune with the DAC, you can see the blue line here. It's basically, it doesn't dip as much in the lower frequencies. It actually holds it a bit more flat. Now, the mid-range I boosted slightly. You could do more to do that. It's just the way this DAC works. I guess just experiment and see what sounds good to you. I didn't want to alter it so much that it sounded unnatural, because when you boost 500, you're actually boosting the frequencies around it too, and it kept some of that boxiness and muddiness that I didn't like. So I didn't lift it too much. On the treble, again, I just did a slight lift because I'm not trying to add too much distortion or mess up the sound too much. And I found this sound profile to sound noticeably better when I was gaming. It still sounds more natural because I fixed some of this mid-bass issue up here in the 170 range. You can see it doesn't peak as much. But overall, I found it more enjoyable. Now, the real kicker, I might as well just show you the bass boost. So if you use a built-in SteelSeries EQ and I activate bass boost, it's not boosting the sub bass, it's boosting the mid bass, which was the worst offender of the headset in the first place. So don't assume that these stock EQ settings are going to be exactly what you're looking for. This is my opinion, by the way. You may like it, so try it, but that is how they boost the bass. It's not all the way down low. So going into my tune, the Sonar tune, you could see a massive difference on frequency response. I boosted the sub bass more. To me, it sounds much better, especially if you're also listening to music. I was able to get rid of that entire mid-bass bump to lower mids that made it sound too warm and almost muddy. So this fixes the tonality of the headset to make it sound a lot more natural. You won't notice this as much in gaming. In fact, some people may like the elevated bass for like a racing game, for example. But if you ever did listen to music on this, this is going to sound a lot more natural to you. And I added a little bit more treble up top. I fixed some of the spikes and I made it a little bit smoother. And honestly, it sounds really nice for music and has a little bit more sparkle again. So I'm going to show you the Sonar tune. First, I'm going to make sure I set this back to flat. Then we are going to get out of here and go to Sonar. So yes, so this is set correctly. Now if I go to game, this is my tune. Now I started with measurement tuning and then I tuned by ear. So I'm just going to go across and then I'll put the numbers on the screen on the left-hand side. At 23.2 hertz, so you can just type 23 hertz, plus 1 dB at a 0.707 Q. That's how wide you're adjusting that boost. A higher number means it's more of a notch. You're boosting very close to 20 hertz and nothing around it. A lower number means you're lifting everything around it as well. So let's just go from left to right. Plus 1, 23 hertz, 0.707 Q. Then I go to 62 hertz, plus 1.8 dB at a 0.8 Q. 93 hertz, minus 3 dB at 0.707 Q. 185 hertz, minus 2.5 dB at 0.707 Q. 528 hertz, 3 decibel lift at 0.707 Q. Minus 1 dB at 2.6 kilohertz. And when you type this in, you have to type 2600 hertz. So minus 1 dB there at a 1.5 Q. Then the upper treble region, plus 2.4 decibels at 3.9 kilohertz, 5 Q. 2.4 decibel lift at 4.83 kilohertz, 5 Q. And then at 6.4 kilohertz, minus 2.5 dB at a 3 Q. And then the 13.8 kilohertz, or 13,800 hertz, 1.4 dB lift at 0.7 Q. That part I went through really fast, so again, you'll probably want to pause it or rewind it, but just reference the numbers on the left side of the screen. When you type your number in by clicking these dots and adding them, because you have to click to add additional dots, just hit the enter button when you type your number in or it doesn't save. You can't just type it, then click the other part. It'll revert back to whatever the original value was. So this makes it look or measure like what I showed you on the screen. And then if you want more bass, voice, and treble, you can adjust the sliders from there to add warmth, just as you see that moving up and down. So you can play with it. Now, I typically don't use spatial audio. However, if you enable spatial audio, drop it all the way to performance mode, and then set your distance to mid or lower, basically 48 or smaller in my opinion, it can be fun. It adds more of an echo reverb type effect. It's not an accurate, real spatial audio engine. It's interpreting a stereo feed and customizing it itself. However, it might be fun to try, so you can give it a shot. I typically leave it off though, and I've been fine with it. Now, I don't want to get too much into Sonar again. I've had other videos dedicated to that. But you can actually tune the way your friends sound in chat. You can use the presets on that. Honestly, balanced or broadcast is fine for your chat. And then the microphone, I've done this. This is what I pretty much use on all my mic tunes. I boost the mid bass a little bit. I remove all the 31 hertz stuff because the mic's not picking that up anyway, so you might as well get rid of the wind noise. And then I pull the 1 and 2 kilohertz down again to kind of get rid of that more tin can walkie-talkie sound. It just smooths out the microphone profile. So this was a long review again, and that's partly because even though it's $100, it has the same features as much more expensive headphones because there's a USB DAC. There's RGB, which you can customize in GG. I will say the RGB, I didn't spend any time showing you this, but you don't have a lot of options. You can pick a static color that stays on, a static color meaning a single color of your choice that breathes off and on, or you can basically have it cycle through its own spectrum of RGB or off. So you can't do like a gradient where it fades from pink to blue, for example, and back and forth. Maybe they'll add that later. So at $100, I actually think it's a pretty compelling headset to play with, especially if you want the USB features and RGB. There really isn't a lot at this price range that's giving it to you. So as crowded as the market is, this still feels fairly unique, and I think a lot of people will like it. Out of the box, if you're just straight up plugging aux and doing nothing else, either get the Nova 1 to save your money. The Black Shark V2 I think has a more agreeable sound if you also listen to movies and music. And then I mentioned in the past the Recon 500, when that goes on sale for $50 from Turtle Beach, it's a smoking deal. But I really, really like the comfort. The comfort is so good on the Nova series, particularly the Nova 1, 3, and 7 series. So I still like it. I think it's a strong recommendation. It's definitely in the top 3 as far as your best one to pick at this price range. And hopefully this video helped you decide what path you want to go down. Again, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm really trying to grow the channel, and I appreciate the support. The channel growth has been better than it ever has been, so thank you all for that. I'll probably do a follow-up and final video where I summarize the entire Nova lineup from cheap to the most expensive. Anyway, with that being said, thank you again all so much for your support, and I will see you next time. Bye.